My background in archaeology and anthropology continues to feed my interests and inform the concerns of my artwork. Archaeology in particular, I would say, is concerned not only with past worlds, but also the existence of past worlds in the present and how they're interpreted, how they're used, and how they exist in our everyday lives. And in a similar way, I'm interested in the ways in which the physical world is rendered and represented and brought into the virtual world in its various forms. This transformation between the physical and the virtual is often characterized by a certain amount of ambivalence between what constitutes documentation or documentary and what constitutes fiction. And it can bring into focus this tension or this ambivalence between the past and our collective future. And examples of this tension or this ambivalence exist everywhere in contemporary urban life, from the sort of CGI architectural renders that you see printed out on large format banners outside of building sites to virtual worlds that contain copies of real world locations as settings for play or learning or simulation, and plenty of examples in between. And these are the subjects that often attract my attention. Tirana has been the capital of Albania for only about 100 years now, and in that time has been built and rebuilt at least 4 times, according to the visions of successive governments. And for the past 20 years or so, the urban fabric has been particularly characterized by an explosion in commercial developments, which puts a huge amount of pressure both on Tirana's public spaces and on its urban heritage. My work, the Tirana Time Capsules, looks at 3 public spaces, which are also neighborhoods, and uses tools traditionally associated with digital documentation, in this case particularly photogrammetry and audio field recordings, to construct a personal response in the form of interactive virtual environments that can be explored by either web browser or using virtual reality. I am very interested in this phenomenon as it makes very concrete this tension between the past and the future. Photogrammetry and 3D scanning more generally is becoming increasingly popular as a low-cost documentation method in fields such as archaeology and architecture, in order to create digital copies of physical monuments or buildings or statues or smaller things like museum objects. And this process is often referred to as virtual preservation or virtual restoration. One implication being that the virtual object is perhaps more durable or long-lasting than the physical scanned object to which it refers, despite digital media as a whole being much more ephemeral. And going even further, it suggests that the virtual object has perhaps become the subject of preservation itself rather than the physical thing. And there are certainly also ethical concerns related with the use of photogrammetry as a documentation method, not least that it privileges a certain kind of heritage object. It usually privileges static, solid objects that do not move with hard surfaces, as opposed to more dynamic or ephemeral subjects. And this sort of privileging of these objects has a certain kind of fossilizing effect on heritage in a way, because humans are almost completely absent from these sorts of visualization, and it is as if the object has been frozen in time. I further explored some of the same themes in a subsequent work for the Albanian Pavilion at this year's Venice Biennale. The pavilion looked at the life and work of the Albanian artist Lumturi Bloshmi, who passed away 2 years ago due to COVID-19. My work used photogrammetry to record objects from her apartment in Tirana and to reconstitute them in a virtual environment that could be explored using a touchscreen in the exhibition space. Another project that I've been working on is a photographic series, an ongoing series entitled Another Facade, which I started in Tirana and have since continued in other cities, including my home city of Berlin. And this series looks at a sort of different kind of virtual world building, in particular that of CGI architectural visualizations and the visions of the future that they represent.